Member Balcom?
Present.
Chair Grimes?
Present.
Vice Chair Gill?
Present.
Member Kettle is absent. Member Rain is absent.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak? I will close the floor. Approval of the minutes from June 2nd, 2026. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes?
No.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the June 2nd, 2026 meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The new business, this item is for ordinance 2026-05, Oakland Town Center rezoning, development agreement, and preliminary subdivision plan.
Yes. An ordinance of the Town of Oakland, Florida, adopting a town official zoning map amendment from C1 Commercial General within the Urban Corridor Design District to PUD Plan Unit Development within the Urban Corridor Design District for certain real property owned by Oakland Town Center LLC, generally located on the north side of State Road 50 at the northwest corner of the intersection of State Road 50 and Catherine Ross Road, as more particularly described herein, with an approximate size of 14.80 acres, approving a development agreement between the property owner and the Town of Oakland, and approving a preliminary subdivision plan, making findings, and providing for conflicts, severability, and an effective date. Okay, one moment. This way. There you go. Do you want this? Yeah. Here.
Good evening, members of the ARB. It's good to be back before you guys again to talk about the Oakland Town Center. Before we get into specifics, we'll go into a little bit of background regarding the actual property itself. So, without going through all of the actual numbers, this property is comprised of 5 distinct existing parcels of land totaling about 14.8 acres. It contains both a commercial future land use classification and zoning district, and it is located within the town's urban corridor design district. And as mentioned in the reading of the ordinance, the purpose of this is it's an all-encompassing package, but the first and foremost is to rezone the property from its existing commercial zoning district to a planned unit development. As part of that planned unit development is the development agreement, which governs and creates the regulations, standards, what is and is not allowed on the property. And with that development agreement, then, if we're going down to the third layer, is the associated preliminary subdivision plan, which the purpose would be to serve as the template if and when it comes through for final construction review by the town. So that's a little bit of a background of what we're here reviewing tonight. Looking at the site location map, the property is bordered on the east by Catherine Ross Road, and the little cutout here you can see is, just for spatial references, the Tractor Supply store there, and you can see the current 5 parcel configuration. So what actually comprises the Oakland Town Center is 11 single-story commercial buildings that vary in size from approximately 10,000 square foot multi-tenant buildings all the way down to approximately 1,200 square foot drive-through building. In total, all of the buildings comprise of 84,020 square feet and is accessed via 5 distinct points, and you can see one off of directly off State Road 50, 2 off of Catherine Ross Road, and 1 off the side street directly in front of the Tractor Supply parking lot. You'll notice here, as part of, and it is indicated on the provided preliminary subdivision plan, part of this project would comprise of the construction of a connecting roadway here, and you can see this red area, to be constructed by the developer, and eventually, once constructed, it would be dedicated to the town as public right-of-way as a transportation improvement. So here is a general overview of the plan. It will become important in a few slides, but just take note of the specific location and orientation of buildings, because we are going to go building by building and discuss what each of these is to look like. So I'll jump back and forth if needed, but just get a general sense of the layout of and configuration of the buildings you see on the site plan. And tying to that, we also have the associated landscape plan. And it is these two things together, including details such as drainage, utility connections, things such as that. All of this together comprise the preliminary subdivision plan that is before you and subject to this ordinance development agreement and associated plan development. So continuing on the overview, as mentioned, there is a governing development agreement which creates a specific set of standards and regulations that in some cases may differ from what the general land development code requires or can be more restrictive. As an example, specific uses that are permitted within the planned unit development include, as you can see here, commercial, retail, office uses, restaurants with no more than one drive-through is all that's being permitted within this developed project, educational and clinic uses. So it is a full gamut of potential uses that could go into this project as governed by the development agreement. There is also a specific prohibition on a couple of uses, both tobacco, smoke shops, marijuana dispensaries. Those are in the agreement and baked in that they cannot, apologize for the pun, cannot go into the subject site. There are also, which are separate from the specific deviations that are being requested before you as the ARB tonight, certain standards, as I mentioned, that do differ slightly from what the general code requires and were negotiated as part of the development agreement drafting process. As an example, the development agreement does permit the maximum width of the commercial buildings to go up to 240 linear feet, as opposed to, I believe it's 150 as per regulated by the code, and that was negotiated and agreed to by the two parties, and that is in the development agreement that is included as part of your packet. And as mentioned, the entirety of the preliminary subdivision plan is incorporated as an exhibit to this development agreement and will be, as I mentioned, the governing reference document for final engineering and construction plan review by the entirety of the town review team. So I think that's an important thing to note is this is a preliminary subdivision plan. This is not the final approval. If and when it gets through this sequence, it will still need to go before the town to ensure that all the design elements in regard to engineering, landscaping are installed properly, all of those elements, including any outside permits that are required, whether it be with the Water Management District, it's my whole life, Orange County Fire, and et cetera, et cetera. So as the appearance review board, you are, certain deviations can be asked of you from the specific standards of the town's design districts, certain variances or dimensional changes. And as the ARB, you do review proposals to ensure that they conform to the intent and purpose of each of the town's design districts. The applicant group did provide a list of specific requests and specific deviations that they are seeking from the code. And as I did mention to each of you when you came in, the initial deviation letters that you received were a previous draft of the request, and the final version is what has been presented to you. The only difference is in terms of the signage, and we'll actually get into the next slide and kind of transition that better. So this remains the same. Per the LDC, 60% of the building is required to be transparent, whether it be through doors, windows, etc. 60% of commercial buildings are required to be transparent and not just solid mass blank walls. What has been proposed by the applicant group is what's known as the pedestrian transparency method, which the stated intent is to really facilitate that more ground level design and change the way that calculation is, is perceived, more from a pedestrian level rather than somebody going by on the turnpike, for example. And as as you can, and now the next two are in relation to signage. So per the land development code, each developed piece of property is permitted a single ground sign. As part of the development, the applicant is requesting 3 ground signs, and I have a rendering of one type of the sign. The applicant group is intending to have their own presentation. You will see a better layout than what is in my own presentation. And in addition to that, for each one of those, 2 of those ground signs, the requested deviation would be to take the maximum sign area, I should say, from 48 feet per the LDC standards to a maximum sign area of 51 square feet. For the third sign, there is no requested deviation from the code requirements. And now we'll go into architectural design. So, as I mentioned, I will go back and forth if needed, but so building B1, actually, Kathy, would you mind if I get the keyboard? That might be helpful for this. So this building type is one of, if I go back to the site plan, so this building here is one of these, if you guys can see my mouse. It's one of the ones that do not have direct frontage on State Road 50 or Catherine Ross Road. It is tucked in behind the primary frontage buildings. And that one is the first elevation set we're looking at. And again, it should be noted that these are preliminary renderings. These are not the formal official elevations that would need to be reviewed as part of the building permitting process. So looking at this is building B2. This is one of the two primary building masses that are going to be fronting along State Road 50. We have here building B3. This one is directly adjacent to that first set of buildings tucked behind the primary fronting buildings on State Road 50. This one is building B4. This is the building to the east, which is also directly fronting State Road 50. This one here is building B5, which is another one of the buildings that will be tucked in behind those buildings that are directly fronting along State Road 50. This is building B6. This is the building, if you're looking at your site plan, that is turned sideways and faces Catherine Ross Road. Looking at building B7, this is, I guess the only way really to show you is to go back to the site plan. So B7 is, apologize. Building B7, this is 7 and 8, so just for reference point, these are these 2 buildings that are facing sideways with their sides facing Catherine Ross Road. I'll go back to those. Okay, so then, as I said, that was B7, and then B8, very similar. These buildings are right next to each other, so they do have similar elevations. And then finally, we get to B9, and this is the building that has the most direct frontage directly against Catherine Ross Road. And if you notice on the site plan, there are the 2 smaller standalone buildings. These are the 2, they're listed, I believe, on the site plan as OP1 and OP2. This is the first building. You can see it's a two-tenant building, and this is also fronting State Road 50. And as mentioned, there is only one permitted drive-through per the development agreement, and this is the preliminary rendering of that singular drive-through facility. Thank you for bearing with me as we went back and forth with the elevations on there. I'm happy to go back and at any of those once we're done with this presentation. And as I mentioned, this was the sign subject to the original request that you received for 2 monument signs instead of 1. These would be located, if you're looking at the site plan, on the primary entrance along State Road 50, and then the second one would be on the entryway to Catherine Ross Road. But the applicant group during their presentation will show you on their site plan where that third, I guess you can call it a keynote sign, would be located at the intersection of those 2 roads. So as noted, this project is proposed to be located within the town's urban corridor design district, with the intent of which is to accommodate mixed-use projects and larger scale developments. Staff did find during our analysis that the proposed development is consistent with the intent and purpose of the urban corridor design district by creating large-scale commercial uses with local and regional accessibility, given its proximity to a very busy commercial thoroughfare. The project would also facilitate the redevelopment of an underutilized vacant property with difficult topography and terrain, which I'm sure the applicant group might get into during their presentation. And of course, the development could promote economic investment and support job creation within the town relative to a vacant piece of land. So based on this, staff does find the proposed Oakland Town Center as presented substantially compliant with the Town of Oakland's Land Development Code and the design district requirements, and do recommend approval of ordinance 2026-05 and provide that is provided with this agenda item. Apologize, it's really hot in here. And the applicant group also has their own presentation that they have queued up, but before we get to them, if you have any questions for me, that concludes staff's presentation, and thank you for your time.
Well, good evening. Thanks, y'all. For the record, Logan Opsahl, Lowndes Law Firm, 215 North York Drive. We brought the whole project team for you, and so really appreciate Taylor going in depth with staff presentation. We intend to do the same, hopefully kind of anticipating your questions, and so we can get all those answered at the forefront. But before we begin, I just want to bring up Alex Reese, the applicant, who wanted to just introduce himself as well.
Hi, my name is Alex Reese, and I thoroughly enjoy working with your town on this project. This project has been a long time coming. It has been a monster project, really. I think that we felt like there was a vision here off of Highway 50 10 years ago, and we saw the growth with Winter Garden and Claremont and some of the towns that you're surrounded by. We felt like that there was a real possibility that this area could grow into an area where people would want to lease product here. And we went through this process with St. John's Water Management, and I digress here, but it was a very long, arduous process as we had to mitigate an acre and a quarter of land on the site. I tell you guys this because over the time period, this area has gotten more and more and more robust in terms of what we can build here now. So what kind of started out is maybe something that would support, well, something very much like Schmidt Construction has across the street, which it was never really all that glamorous to me. The rents now in the area, plus just the trips per day, support something quite different, something that I'm very excited to bring to you guys today. It's going to be an incredible project, and we're trying to do something very much like a Winter Garden feel or a Winter Park feel to this. I think the biggest thing that I'm the most proud of is the team that we've assembled. Okay, so Brent, who's with Kimley Horn, who I believe works with your town, is just incredible. He's an incredible partner for us. He's done an incredible job working with St. John's Water Management. Bobby, who works with Jim and I, is not here tonight, but I think you guys know him through Steve Healy and some of the projects that he's done. He's another incredible asset. Alexi is just a leasing guru. I mean, she deals with a lot of different tenants that we think are going to fit very nicely here, from an organic craft feel that I think is going to give you a luxurious kind of feel to the town center. You know, we're not looking to do a cookie cutter town center here. And then I would like to also point out Costel Ventura, who is in-house design with me. He handles a lot of our in-house stuff and has done just an exceptional job working with this. Logan behind me works with a young woman named Tara Tidro, who's also just an incredible part of our team, just incredible. And then Amanda Sheffield, who's our superintendent. So it's been a real process getting here. I've really, though, thoroughly enjoyed working with you guys, and I look forward to presenting the project to you tonight, and hopefully you guys will like it as much as we do.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. So, I hate when that happens, right? We'll dive in, and again, appreciate the depth. Since we're here at ARB, wanted to give you some appearances and give you some of these pictures. And so, of course, the next 3 hours, you'll hear from them. I'm just kidding. Want to give you some renderings of the project itself. I think Alex did a great job of touching on the quality in which we're trying to instill, but this is the Oakland Town Center. I mean, Oakland has its own unique brand, and this is an opportunity to capture that. And so this is what we've done. We have an assemblage of 11 different buildings, almost 50, or more than 50 tenant opportunities. And you'll see throughout these pictures kind of a thoughtful design of breaking up what we're used to seeing, providing courtyards, connectivity, the type of things that Oakland's become accustomed to. And here's some of those features that you have with the fountains and some gathering places. We're not just focusing on the proper traffic, vehicular safety, and how those all interact with the buildings, but also walkability. And how we're doing that is having things like these unique lightings, umbrellas. You saw some of the water features designed around the movement, and people utilize their golf carts. A lot of connectivity with the town, and so this project really focuses on those characteristics that make Oakland special. We're going to talk a little bit about the signage, but I think this is a good place to just hand over briefly to Alexi. You can talk a little bit about the tenants and what we're looking to gather in this place. If you want to speak briefly to that.
Hi guys, thank you for your time. So we are really trying to, bring tenants in that are going to be community centric, right? So not just all your national brands, but we want to create a really curated mix of tenants. So new to market restaurants, but then also local brands that are very popular that people know of. Fitness, health, and wellness is a really important category, I think, for Oakland in general, but in general, health and wellness category is a huge category that's growing a lot. And then, you're not just your basic coffee shop, but something that makes you want to sit there and work for a couple hours, and it's really community centric and where people meet and spend time. And that's the whole idea behind Oakland Town Center. We're not just creating, another shopping center, but it's a sense of place, right? We're placemaking, and so in order to do that, we need those outdoor spaces, those beautiful facades. Signage is super important for these brands that we're trying to bring into the market. And we've had to do that on several other projects too, but to be able to get their attention on projects like this, these are the things that we kind of need. For example, some of the tenants that we're talking to that we're looking at bringing is concepts like Motec and Maman and Pura Vida. Those are all out of South Florida and New York, but they're actively looking in Winter Garden right now. And there's very little space in Winter Garden. So Oakland is a great opportunity for them to kind of service that Winter Garden need and the Claremont need when there's very little space. Oakland fills that for these brands. And so as they're actively looking, this is our chance to present to brands like that. Health and wellness concept, Solid Core Pilates is a great brand, very well known. They're actively looking in the market. Barry's Boot Camp, we just did a deal with them, so they're going to open their first location in Winter Park, and naturally they're going to be looking for their second and third option, and Winter Garden is hot on their list as well. Pause is another one. It's one of those hot sauna places, cold plunge. So again, catering to that health and wellness concept, that's another brand that's constantly looking at opportunities. And these are new to market, which is great because we're getting, the attention that Oakland will get with these new to market brands, and that they chose this location for their, for their next store is huge for us. Glow 30 is a med spa, facial space. And then of course, breakfast is huge with the church being next door. We know breakfast is a big deal, and so we want to bring in a really cool breakfast concept. I mean, of course, everybody loves a Kiki's, and First Watch, but we'd love to bring in something like Snooze Eatery, which has been looking in the market, and that would be new to market. And they have not only, a breakfast concept, but they're also a bar. So you've got more of that bar component. It's a little bit different, and it's more of a full service versus a cafe. And then Pure and Simple is another one, which our team actually represents, and they're always looking in the market as well. And Motec actually fills that category. And then some healthier concepts like, Naked Farmer and Pura Vida. Those are healthy salad bowl, concepts, organic, brands. And then some of our local favorites, Good Salt Group. A lot of people know Good Salt Group. They did Reyes Mascaria. They've got in downtown, I just heard Sparrow Wine Bar, and a couple others that they own in town. Sushi, they've got a sushi concept as well, and they're always looking at opportunities. So, and they really like to come into a market, and they will create a brand like the Monroe that they did in downtown that's based off of the area and what the area was. So the Monroe, is named after a professor that was the first black school in downtown Orlando, and they created the whole concept around that. So they'll do things like that. Like they'll come into Oakland and see what Oakland's all about and create a concept that really feels local to the city or to the town. And then some of the dessert concepts we'd love to get in here, Salt and Straw, Mayday Ice Cream, Kelly's Ice Cream. I know they're already in Plant Street, but they could actually get their own brick and mortar location here. So those are some of the brands that, just to give you an idea of what we're trying to target here for this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So just a couple more slides and a couple more minutes. I just want to ground the important work in what we're doing today, and that is we talked about the PUD request, the development agreement, and the PSP. Of course, the PUD zoning designation is what they call a negotiated zoning district, and so it gives a real opportunity to work with the unique challenges and constraints of this site to allow the flexibility to make something like this come to life, while also making sure we don't have knucklehead stuff going on here, and allow for the type of design that can really see this thing effectuated. One of the things that came up in the discussion about how it's designed in the courtyards and the way the glass and canopies is, I'll show that in a few slides. That's a real opportunity through this vehicle of the PUD and the development agreement, which will govern it. And so I just like grounding the pictures into what we're actually doing, because it's important and it allows things like this to happen. So this is just another view, and I think this says it all, kind of a conclusion of what we've been selling to you, which is this is a landmark. This is a welcome center of Oakland, and this is an opportunity to provide some really top-notch tenants and architectural detail in a way that Oakland, again, has come to be recognized for. And this is just a visualization of what I outlined. Varied heights, projections, allowing a uniqueness of each tenant space and the buildings between them, and not just the outside pedestrian connections that we talked about, particularly in the opportunity to provide some off-site improvements, but also the sidewalks and bicycle-friendly nature and just having that interconnectivity. Here's another view of the canopies and how those spaces are broken up. And so we'll end on this slide that has some pictures. I know we threw a lot at you, and I'm thankful for your patience and for being here, making quorum tonight, and we're happy to answer any follow-ups you have. Thank you.
I have a question. I think in one of the slides it says that it is pedestrian
Yeah, so certainly infrastructure like the bike racks and things like that, but the wider sidewalks as well allow for more pedestrian access, allow the bikes to safely traverse in and out of the sidewalk areas. And then as you'll see here, this isn't just one big strip area that all looks the same. The fact that you have areas that are broken up with, and you see some of the crosswalks and pedestrian safety features, that allows to break up these long alleyways of cars that can get up to a certain speed. So all those types of things go into a shared space from pedestrian to bicycle, and then of course vehicular as well, and golf carts, let's not forget the golf carts.
So would there be these wide sidewalks connecting all of the courtyards, amenity spaces? Yeah, I think it's hard to see on the site plan, like any of the sidewalks, but I would assume they're connecting all of the amenity spaces to
Do you mind passing that?
main roads.
Sure.
That's okay. I can easily answer that for you. So we have, if you kind of look
If you
at
can
the-
speak into the mic,
sorry about
please,
that.
thank you.
If you look at the area of Catherine Ross, right, because we know we're at about a half a mile, not even to, let's say, Orange Trail, right, so and that's just the main bike. So there's a couple of things. First of all, if you would make it here to Catherine Ross on a bike, we would provide in just about every amenity and courtyard, you'll have bike racks so you can, place your bike. From there on, the sidewalk actually has connectivity all the way really to the, well, I wouldn't say to the church because you'd have to cross that street, but certainly to the far end of the property. And I know it's hard to see on the plan, but everything that's kind of sort of dotted, that's around the buildings, and if you start at that point in Catherine Ross, you can walk along buildings 7 and 8 and then 6 and 4 and 2. Of course, there's going to be a couple of crosswalks, but you can certainly walk through that whole entire center. And those are the wider sidewalks that we're talking about. Of course, we don't think the traffic in the center is going to be, insane because it's very well laid out and everything. And we thought of that because Oakland's known for biking. So whether you come on a bike or on a, whether you want to leave your bike at building 7 or you want to ride it all the way to perhaps buildings 1 and 3, you'll have a little position there where you can put your bike. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have another question. In some of the renderings, there's a retaining wall along 50.
Yes, and that's a
Little lake.
brand. That's a brand.
I'll take that. So as Brent Lenzen with Kimley Horn, 200 South Orange Avenue, Suite 600. But as Taylor Brisby mentioned before, the topography of the site's a bit challenging. We had some stormwater nuances with St. John's as well. So if you look at the plan, the northwest corner where that large dry pond is, it's like elevation 114. And the bottom right, southeast, is about 97. So there's at least 17 feet of fall across the site from northwest to southeast. And that's really happening along the State Road 50 frontage, which made it really difficult from an overall master infrastructure grading and drainage standpoint. And then on top of that, unfortunately, the initial development that happened that affects these parcels was the Tractor Supply, and they built a large dry pond immediately adjacent to it. Several of the parcels included within this project are benefited by that stormwater. The negative is the stormwater's at the top of the hill. So physically getting the water to the dry pond is not achievable without raising finished floors and hydraulically being able to drain the water. Oops, if I did that, I'm sorry. So with the dry pond up there, we have Apaka Basin for stormwater, Wekiva Recharge, which requires dry pretreatment and infiltration before you get to a wet pond. Sorry for the stormwater jargon, but all that to say, based on stormwater, it demanded the buildings being set at a certain elevation, inlets being set at a certain elevation, which had to drain to the dry ponds first to get to a downstream wet, which is why you kind of see a cascading deal with that large rectangular white space as a dry pond. A lot of our basin goes to it. The basin that can't get there goes to that boomerang, we'll call it, around the wet pond. That's kind of a dry upstream pretreatment, which then goes to the lower wet pond that's at that bottom southeast corner. So with all those nuances, we have a retaining wall near that stormwater pond along 50 that's about 10 feet tall. So a little bit of site constraints kind of drove that design. And that's kind of what you'll see within the waiver request. Some of the building separation from 50 was due to that nuance of having to build a wall, having the structural integrity of a wall and a building adjacency, and really trying to centralize the focus of the development more internalized because of that elevation change off of 50.
explain what that would look like? Basically, the retaining wall, and then sidewalk, and then 50, or is there a landscape buffer?
It's gonna be basically State Road 50 turn, like their travel lanes. You'll have a sidewalk running along 50 that's still at road grade. Then you have an elevated wall, and then there's gonna be landscaping up above on top of the wall, and then the building facade up there. I think the best picture, I don't know where it was in the presentation, was the one that showed the pedestrian down at the street level with the monument sign there. It's probably the best example.
Is there gonna be like a good example of what the landscaping is gonna look like on that corner? That intense?
So obviously, you know, the renderings and everything, so our landscape architect's gonna work very hard on it, because our goal is to have, because that's gonna be, the way we see it, it's certainly our main entrance, right, for most of the vehicles, and we want that to look very nice, and that's why we created even the monument, you know, we made it a lot more architectural to actually integrate with the center rather than just be, you know, a more billboard looking thing. And the intent is, yes, to landscape it as nice as possible. Is it gonna look, you know, tit for tat like that? You know, probably not, but it's going to be the same exact feel. So that's really the intent of the renderings. And we want to make that wall, you know, as pretty as we can. Good news is that wall is not 10 feet everywhere, but you know that's just what we have to work with. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So the wall, the retaining wall.
Yes, sir.
At the corner will be about 10 feet high,
Yes, sir.
but at the western end of the property, does it go
It goes lower.
lower?
Yeah, that's the highest it ever is. So it kind of goes both ways that way.
Okay.
So it's not going to be as high as possible, but that's what we try to make it as pretty as possible. You know, we have the buildings that are very nice. You know, the elevations, but we haven't really skipped on anything,
Right.
so we can I don't want to say distract from it, but you know, just really make the best of it.
All right, so one of the things that I just wanted to ask about was being able to see back of house from all three roads. And so the renderings show a lot of architectural detail.
Yes, sir.
So that's going to be pretty.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we did that intentionally, and you know, we wanted to offer obviously you know the
Not a blank wall.
correct. Yes, sir. Yeah, exactly. And you know, we do the best we can with landscaping as well. Just we're trying to make it as obviously as nice as possible. The idea was that it was elevated, so you know, it's a little less visible to begin with. We're going to add some landscaping, but we added the articulation on purpose, so it's not a flat wall like you would see normally.
Just to touch on that, just to expand upon that too, John, you know, once it gets through this portion of its review sequence and it goes to the final construction, at that point, that's when it goes beyond just renderings. And we have the actual architectural elevations to show even more detail than what you're seeing here to ensure that you know, the breakup of that massing does occur and you're not, as you say, looking at the back of a house or essentially a cinder block wall.
One thing that I wanted to say just on the wall is, you know, as a developer, right, when we saw this, we were like, this is horrible. Because it's very expensive to build. This is extremely expensive. This isn't something that you would go out and buy a piece of land and start building walls and raising land. That's crazy. There was really no way around it in order to develop it, but the takeaway from it, from our perspective, is it gives a real intimate feel to the center. It's going to give a very private, intimate feel, almost like an oasis in a way, because you're raising the center up and you're kind of buffering out 50. So from a perspective of being in the center, I think it's going to make the center, you know, quite attractive, to be honest with you.
So you have a 10-foot wall at the highest point, and then a railing on top of that?
Yes.
So maybe like 13, 14 feet tall at some points?
Yeah. At the highest point, which is at the far eastern near the stormwater pond, it is about 10 feet. And at this entrance, it was around 7 or 8 feet here. But yeah, if the fall distance is more than 30 inches, you need to have a railing on it for safety reasons. So yeah, it'll have at least a 42-inch railing on top of that. But obviously, we want it to look good. We'll pick a material and color and product to look as good as it can.
So story, the whole complex. Is that by design or is that by the land development code?
By design.
By design.
Okay, so you could actually go up.
Yes.
Yeah, because, I mean, to have some of the eateries that y'all want there, wasn't, like a second story open patio for some of the restaurants?
Tenants specifically don't like people on top, and I haven't had a two-story request. The
But
tenants,
not an actual total second story, just like the patio.
that's more of an Alexi.
Like a rooftop, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we all love rooftops, but here in Orlando, Central Florida, it's just not as common yet. It's not like, people can't think, like the consumer doesn't think, like vertically, right? So like, I'm gonna go to a second floor. It's just, they want to be able to park right in front of their space and go right into the business that they're going into. I would love to get rooftops in here, like a second story patio, but it's just not, it's also very expensive. So even for these restaurants, for their build out, like we're delivering, let's say, a shelf space, right? And then they have to do their build out. They have to then account for vertical transportation, so an elevator and stairway, and it's just very expensive. And with construction costs right now, it's just not, it's not as possible to get something like that approved, although we would love to see it.
I guess this question is for Elise. Oakland's name like this, is that allowed to be put on any business? Like, so the Oakland Town Center,
So,
are they gonna have your own rendering, or can they incorporate?
they cannot without our permission because it's actually a protected logo.
Okay,
But, I mean, what they're doing is it's showing it's not a town space, right? But it also serves, so it's a private development. To me, it also serves as an entryway into the town of Oakland, right? So it's showing, I appreciate them using Oakland Town Center because you're entering, and we've been having a hard time with this for a long period of time. Our placemaking for our town is, when do you know when you're in Oakland? And to me, this is like perfect, right? I mean, there's one other little development on the east side, but other than that, you're coming into Oakland. And so
Yeah.
this shows you're in Oakland now. And I just want to say, they've worked, like Alex said, a long time with us to get to this point. So we've talked through it a lot of times internally, with staff, to get to this point that they've been able to come forward with.
I like it a lot, actually.
Can we talk about the fenestration?
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah. Yeah, is there a question in particular, or?
Yeah, so the way that I understand it is that the town code is 60% fenestration, on all public paths. Is that right?
Correct, yeah, your letter of code, yeah, I believe it's.
So I guess I'm wondering, like, as I'm looking at it, the building 2 and the building 4, the faces that are towards Highway 50, that I can understand because it's gonna be like 10 feet in the air, so
Sure.
nobody will see it. But building 8 and 9, the faces that are towards Catherine Ross Road, they say 0% fenestration, so it would look like the back of house, but to me that would be a public primary frontage. So I'm wondering like why.
Sure, yeah, no, it's a good question. So in building 8, for instance, it's only its side that actually butts up to, and then we do have some fenestration on that side. And as far as, building 9, which is the one on Catherine Ross, right up on the top right corner, there were several reasons, right? And one of them was, we wanted to stay consistent with the center. The second is, we found out tenants And also guests, you know, if they park in the back, like if you look at this one, and if the access is on both sides, in other words, it would look the same on both sides, where we would have same type of fenestration on each side. One, it gets a little bit confusing, you know. Second, the tenants, you know, they want to have a little bit of a delivery area, right? Because, you know, they're bringing in whatever they're bringing, so they might just want to keep it out of the site. Or you might have in a restaurant, you know, employees going out back and, you know, taking a break and stuff like that, so they kind of want to, you know, they want to use those areas. So, as, you know, to keep with the consistency and to make it, you know, flow, and actually it's a matter of cost as well, you know, because we really do have to stay within reason. What we thought was a nice thing is we did not provide, you know, that flat wall in the back. So we actually kept the front and the back of the building look completely the same when it comes to the articulation. So we're spending the same exact money, and, you know, and we're going to put the landscaping buffer behind it, and that will allow us to save a little bit of money, provide the tenants, you know, with an actual space that they can use, and our guests, you know, we believe that they're going to really come in from the center, whether on a bike, whether, you know, they're going to turn that corner, come on in, and they're going to access it probably through the parking lot. So we wanted to make it as beautiful as possible, because, you know, most centers, and that's why I think the gentleman asked, you know, is it going to be a flat wall, because that's what you normally see on the back of the house. So I hope that answers your question. You know, we try to stay consistent. We, you know, try to, you know, keep our costs in line as well, and but still provide something, you know, provide you something.
Yeah, that does answer my question. And I understand, you have the tenants and, you know, the functionality of the space. I live on the other side of Oakland Avenue, so I love that we're connecting to 50 here. I do wish, or I hope that there's a focus for the pedestrian traffic on Catherine Ross Road, and how those buildings interact with the sidewalk space.
Well, yes, and we do have it. Of course, you know, the city sidewalk is a little beyond our control, but as far as our center, walkability and pedestrian, everything was designed to pedestrian scale. Our fenestration, our everything, you know, the articulation, everything. So, you know, we want you to feel good in there, and that's what, to Alex's point, I think we made that wall work in our favor, because not everything faces inwards rather than, you know, 250, and as much as we love 50, it's really not that pretty regardless. So now you're gonna have this walkable, and that's why we sacrificed a lot of square footage for open areas. You know, we split up all these buildings, and even to the variance that Taylor spoke of, up to, what was it, 250 feet. Actually, if you look at it, I don't believe any of our buildings are even close to that. I think our largest one, it's 170, because we've cut them up and we've added, you know, 17,000 square feet of green space. So that's kind of long and the short of it.
Yeah. So with the fenestration, it's what, building 1, 3, and 5? Because
Yes,
there's a lot of parking behind that. So it's not a closed book right now. There could be entrances to some of those buildings back there, or when
So,
you park back there, you have to walk around.
No, if you park there, you would walk, well, if you look at buildings 1 and 3, they have that courtyard, so that's specifically designed for pedestrian access. I think it's a 25 or 30 foot wide courtyard and the same length, because we wanted guests, when they park back there, to be able to walk.
Okay.
Building 5, yeah, sure, they'll have to walk a little bit around it, but yes, and even in those buildings, just so you'll know, although they're facing the driver attention, we still have the pretty same articulation on front and back. So even if you park back there, you're still not looking at this ugly flat wall.
No, I didn't. I
Yeah.
noticed that, definitely.
Fair enough.
Also, looking at the map, it looks to me that this is at the rear of the school. And I don't know if this is on the town side or the developer side, but I do think there should be more vegetation, because from the rear of the school, you would be looking into this commercial area, and I think it kind of kills like the courtyard of the school.
I believe there's a road between us two, perhaps you can.
So all of the fields are between the school and Sadler eventually will go through, And we wanna use that potentially to loop the cars around a bigger loop to get some of that traffic off of the other roads. So, this is kind of a master plan, right? So there will be probably some vegetation more on the school side, but we'll be working on that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think I'd like to see like more of a visual barrier between the school and the commercial space.
Yeah, and naturally, I think we'll have, the required, trees and everything that's per code, so there will be, it's not like it's gonna be bare, so don't picture that. There are requirements, and I don't know if the top of my head, because I don't specialize in landscaping, but, you have to have trees every certain feet, and you have to have, so those obviously will be in place, as part of our agreement and everything, so it's not like it's gonna be like a, like a bowling alley, or just an empty field in any stretch. So, and that goes to the center in general, as a whole, not just that.
Kathy, would you actually mind switching over to the landscape plan? So just to get a sense, there are particular requirements for,
Yeah,
commercial-
Jason,
for buffering of commercial properties, and you can see,
yeah, the
every
tree spacing
circle-
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a 12-foot wide landscape buffer there between that drive aisle and the proposed public road that's gonna happen. And then we clustered plantings within the dry pond in those pockets. Is there a particular area that's missing in your vision on this?
No, I just think along the north side, to me, like, I would prefer like a full row of trees, And from what I could tell on the agenda, it looks like you're taking out all of the existing trees. So these would be new planted trees. So I guess when I see this, I'm picturing like smaller trees, Yeah.
Yeah, and the tree removal is, for the topography we talked about earlier, it's just physically impossible to save the trees when you're changing grade 20 feet. But I don't think there'd be any issue with us continuing the planting row there. You see where there's a gap before it gets to where the driveway connection is, right by that L104 label. I think we could add a few there when we move towards final design. Just obviously site visibility, there's a driveway entrance there, but beyond that, I don't see an issue with that.
And it's certainly something, we would have to, during the final engineering review, be mindful with our landscape architects. Because there is a point where you saturate too many trees to create a row, and now all of a sudden none of them can survive because they're competing for similar resources. So it is something we can consider if the applicant group does propose a more robust tree line along that northern boundary, but it would be done in a way to ensure that the survival and the function of that area reaches its full potential.
Sure, I'd like for you to consider the view from the school, from the playground, from the courtyard. I think their main parking is at the northwest of this site, so yeah, I think just as long as you're mindful of their view.
We'll take that under advisement, but we'll look into that. I promise you, we'll look into that. It seems like a pretty easy fix to figure out some buffer there.
So just, I guess one question about the signage. When I was reading through it, having the two signs made total sense. Because they're two different roads. You're coming from Capitol
Yes, sir.
Rock, they're coming in on 50. But the third one, I'm not opposed to it, but we haven't really heard any reason why, other than just, because it's gonna have tenant names on it also, or is it just gonna say Oakland Town Center?
So the way we have it proposed, it only has 4 tenant names, and we thought, if we have some anchor tenants, and just throw a name here, like let's say Trader Joe's or whatever, I don't know, something like that, we would offer that. But the main reason we actually put that there is to be more like a gateway. It's more of like, welcome to the town center, Oakland Town Center, and also welcome to Oakland. Because of the point made earlier, I think, you'll probably agree that that's gonna be one of the main access points into Oakland once Capitol Ross is completed. So, it will announce our center, but it will announce your town too. And, we wanted to put something that you'd be proud of, we'll be proud of. It's not something that's gonna bring us a lot of, what should I call it?
It was a marquee sign that we
Right.
put, because we thought it signalized the Oakland Town Center, right? And you see it, it's more prominent, and it kind of opens it up to like, here's the entrance to Oakland. That was the idea with that sign. It's not a sign that, you know, we have to have, it's not the end of the world if that's, but we think the sign looked really nice, and we thought that it gave, I don't know, we felt like there's a fountain that's gonna be behind there. There's like a DOT, water area that we're gonna make into like a fountain, and we just thought that sign looked really good, you know?
And it's gonna be at a 45?
That's the plan, yeah, at about a 45, and it'll be, you know, set back a little bit from the intersection, and, you know, that's why we want it to be a little more prominent too, so when you drive there, you can see it, and it's a reference point to Oakland, a reference point to the center, and we thought it would benefit, you know, for all of us.
Are you all talking higher or lower than the retaining wall?
Well,
It would sit back,
yeah,
and it would
This
sit,
would be at grade.
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
on grade above the retaining wall?
It would be before the retaining wall.
So if you look,
In that
if you
corner,
look at the western and northern edge of that triangular pond there, there's, you see the bold black line? That's where the retaining wall that runs along 50, it turns north and then heads east to connect to Catherine Ross. So that keeps the whole site and that dry retention up high. But that triangular-ish stormwater pond, that's really down at grade, because that is an actual wet pond. So when you get to that corner where Catherine Ross meets 50, that's all those improvements in that wet pond are gonna be down at grade.
It would almost be a sidewalk level, just.
it's
Yeah,
gonna look really
basically, yeah.
nice and
So-
great. It'll look like a fountain, it'll have a lot,
When you
it'll
come
look
in-
nice, and then you'll see the retaining wall.
Yeah, you'll see,
It'll have a nice presence to it.
as you're heading westward on 50, you'll see Catherine Ross intersect, you're on 50 at grade. You'll see a pond at eye level, signage at eye level, then you'll see the pond bordered with the retaining wall and the site above it.
Anybody else have anything?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee members have any questions or comments? Is there anyone present who would like to speak on this item? I will close the floor. Committee members have any further comments?
I guess, yeah, one, but this is more for police. So it's gonna be Sadler Avenue? The road.
Yes, yes.
So is it going to stop, or is it going to connect to Sadler Avenue, West Sadler?
I don't think it can go all the way there. I think it'll stop, but it'll pick up on the other side then.
Okay. There's no way to get them connected?
I don't think we have property to connect it over there. But we'll continue to look at it, but right now I don't think there's a way to
Because I
do
still
that.
would like to see Hull connected.
Yeah, I understand.
I mean, it makes total sense for everything we're trying to do in that whole corridor.
Yeah.
It makes total sense, but, okay. But I have nothing else. I like it. I like everything.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept ordinance number 2026-05, the Oakland Town Center rezoning development agreement and preliminary subdivision plan as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned at 7:30 PM.
Thank you very much.